Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, as the case may be. It's 9 o'clock, and I think it's time to start our virtual learning hour. It's my pleasure to welcome you all. I'm Barbara Czachurska-Jones on behalf of International Cooperative Research Group, ICRG, research arm of the U.S. Overseas Cooperative Development Council, OCDC. We have a full agenda here, so let's quickly review. We will start with a Zoom poll, which is a great way for all of those present to voice their view and be a participant in our session. We will then have Dr. Hermansen, the director of ICRG, to broadly set the stage for today's presentations. And then we will have three presentations representing three different countries and three different environments in which cooperatives work, followed by question and answers and reflection session. Please, everyone, feel free to communicate your comments, your reflections, either in the chat or in the Q&A box. We will try to make sure that we have a bit time at the end of presentations to address some of those questions. One word before we proceed, I want to explain how we ended up with the three countries, because it may seem that the selection of these particular countries is random. Well, it isn't. There is quite a lot of connecting points in between. Poland was one of the four countries where ICRG has done recently a study, a four-country study, what difference do cooperatives make? And this study revealed a lot of interesting and important points about the cooperative movements around the world. And perhaps our team can give a link to the studies for those who yet haven't had an opportunity to get familiar with it. Ukraine is the country that several of OCDC members had or have currently ongoing programs. And I'm thinking here about World Council of Credit Unions, WOCU, Global Communities, NCBA CLUSA, and ACDI VOCA specifically. These organizations have followed up on a number of contacts with the Ukrainian cooperative movement and partners, and are still actively pursuing them. And Zambia is the country where colleagues from NRECA International currently implement important programs. So this is an interesting combination and an interesting composition of countries which hopefully will share with us some of their perspective on the activities within the cooperative sector that are currently going on. So let's move on to the Zoom poll. I want to ask our colleague, Communications Manager Silandi, to walk us through the Zoom poll. Silandi?
Thank you, Barbara, and hello, everyone. A pleasure to be here with each of you. As Barbara mentioned, we have a brief Zoom poll here at the beginning of our session, and what this Zoom poll is based on is actually from your responses in your registration for this event. So the question that we asked previously was based on your work or just your knowledge of rural co-ops. What are some of the key challenges that you face? And from all of the many responses that we received, we were able to organize them into these categories that you see on the screen: co-op governance, financial limitations, agriculture-specific challenges, new technology, and managerial skills gaps. And so for our Zoom poll today, which I will ask Nick to launch, the question that we have for you is to pick out just 3 of those challenges that were pointed out by registrants. Which ones of those challenges actually resonate with you the most? And so, Nick, if you could launch the Zoom poll, and it should be appearing on your screen now, and you can select 1, 2, 3, or more. But just based off of what you've seen, we'd like to know again, which of these challenges really resonate with you the most. And so again, those options are co-op governance, financial limitations, agriculture-specific challenges, new technology, or managerial skills gaps. So we'll give just a couple more seconds for a few more people to respond. And thank you all for your participation in that. So Nick, I think that we can end the poll now and share the results. Thank you very much. So it looks like here that some of the top challenges that came out, co-op governance, financial limitations, as well as managerial skills gaps kind of rose to the top there. And so we'll definitely be keeping those in mind and hope that our presenters can even address some of these challenges as well. And of course, throughout the course of the session, if you have any other specific questions that relate to any of these categories, please feel free to put that in the chat or the Q&A, and we will be sure to answer that either at the end of this session, and if we don't, then we'll have an opportunity to coordinate with our speakers and answer those questions for you after the event. So thank you so much for participating, and Barbara, I will hand it back over to you.
Thank you. And I will hand it over to Judith. Dr. Hermanson, the director of ICRG. Could you please set the stage for today's presentations?
Thank you very much, Barbara, Zalandi, and Nick. Very interesting poll, and very pleased to get the input of all of you participants and attendees here today. Warm welcome to you from ICRG and OCDC. We're very, very pleased that you can be with us and have taken some time to join this virtual learning hour. This is, as Barbara was mentioning, a virtual learning hour series. We hold it every other month, and it focuses on topics that have arisen that we think will be of interest and will benefit to our diverse constituencies of cooperative stakeholders around the world. Barbara mentioned the study that we did, what difference do cooperatives make? And we found, we've actually recently added 3 countries to that series, not yet published, but we found an extraordinarily positive pattern at a very high level across all of those cooperatives, that people who belong to cooperatives tend to have greater social capital than those who do not in their countries, and they tend to have higher incomes and many other measurable differences. This was a rigorous study, so it's not just people's stories, although certainly informed by those. At the ICRG, our research is aimed toward expanding the uptake of cooperatives and enhancing their impact on people's lives. We believe and have documented evidence that cooperatives can substantially improve the lives of people across the globe in many different settings with many different histories, different cultures, just across the board. Of course, there are variations, but it is a very encouraging thing for those of us who are interested in supporting the broad-based development and opportunity. There is a caveat, however. Cooperatives have to have a certain kind of framework for them to work, both within the regulatory and legal environment of countries, and of course, within the cooperative itself. It's quite interesting that cooperative governance is ranked very high in this poll. And of course, because cooperatives are of the people, that they are designed, people coming together to achieve their shared objectives, that governance framework reflect their democratic, nonpartisan democratic approach, that each member, one vote in setting the priorities and all aspects of governing and managing the cooperative. So that is a very important area. And it is across all sectors and all geographies, a very important area. And interesting that here we are today talking about rural cooperatives, as if they are different from other kinds of cooperatives. In terms of our findings in our high-level research, we find that rural cooperatives, urban cooperatives, they fit within that overall pattern. However, I must say, it's important to note when people say rural cooperatives, very often agriculture is what comes to mind, and very often that is a priority. But we will find, and I think hear from some of our presenters, that one can find cooperatives in a rural area that span the spectrum of types of cooperatives, both in terms of sectors of concentration, as well as in type, consumer, worker, producer. I would also add to that, just from my own observation, that in some places, there are kind of not necessarily value chain related cooperatives that form, but service cooperatives that enhance. And this is particularly true in rural development, in my experience, such as transportation cooperative or whatever. The challenges of cooperatives in rural areas that has been articulated and are very well known, apparently, to most of you here, I think should also be seen as opportunities. They are they open ways and paths to, if resolved, to really help rural areas to develop and to become flourishing parts, or even more flourishing parts, depending on circumstances of the economy. In countries such as the United States, India, and many others, rural cooperatives are given special attention. They are able to provide, one of the challenges perhaps that rural areas share is remoteness, in some place insularity. And so cooperatives help to aggregate, which is their power wherever they are, the people who, their services, their products, and help them to reach markets, to access services such as communication, energies, and so forth. So they are a remarkable engine, if you will, for rural areas to develop and achieve their aspirations. So I will be listening along with all of you and learning with great interest from the experiences of our distinguished presenters from the three countries of Poland, Ukraine, and Zambia. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Judith. The presenters who will speak about Poland, let me say a word. Professor Suchoń is a renowned specialist in cooperative space. She is the recipient of several awards awarded by the cooperative representatives and bodies in Poland. She's an editor and author of many publications on subject of cooperative matters. And she's joined here today by Dr. Marzec, who works with her. Both of them are representing Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan, Poland. Professor Suchoń, please.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about the cooperative in Poland. I would like to say something about rural areas, because I occupy generally about agricultural law, so cooperatives are connected with this region. But of course, in Poland, we have together more than 10,000 cooperatives. So I would like, as I mentioned, concentrate on the rural areas. So could you make the next slide, please? So the Poland, as we know, is situated in the central part of Europe. We have more than 37 million people. So for the people, it's also important a cooperative, because the next slide, we have a lot of different kinds of cooperatives, and more than 300,000 there are housing cooperatives. They are also cooperatives connected to agriculture. We have also the social cooperatives, the energy cooperatives, which are the new kind of cooperatives. Rural areas are important, of course, for all the people, because 93% of our area the rural areas territory, and we have 40% of Polish population live on rural areas. As I mentioned, we have on rural areas agriculture cooperative, but they are also important to ensure the employment by cooperative. And I would like to mention about social cooperative, which give a work for disabled people and for whom the opportunities in rural areas compared with the city are limited. So the next slide, we have, as I mentioned, a lot of different kinds of cooperative. We have consumer cooperative, we have energy, housing, cooperative banks, which are very important in rural areas. We have also service cooperatives, dairy cooperatives, well known from the small to the bigs, like Mlecovita, which are well known in the world. We have also supply and sell cooperatives. So we call it the Samopomoc Chłopska. The next slide, please. So we have our cooperatives has history, can I say? Cooperativeness in the Polish lands has a rich history, and since the beginning it has been related with agriculture. Stanisław Staszic is considered to have been the precursor of Polish cooperativeness. Stanisław Staszic was born in Piła, in Wielkopolska, in the region where I live. So in 1916, Stanisław Staszic established Hrubieszów Agricultural Society, which is the first cooperatives. Cooperatives developed at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, when Poland was not an independent country, and when it was under the partition. At that time, cooperatives brought Poles together and helped them fight for Poland. After Poland regained its independence in 1918, after the First World, the Act on Cooperativeness was passed on 29 October 1920. The next slide, please. So the cooperatives exist also after the Second War, during the socialist time. But the problem is that during the socialist period, cooperative principles were not respected. Yes, we explain the negative attitude of people towards cooperative in the post-socialist country. In such country like France, Germany, USA, there is more cooperative than in Poland, in Czech Republic, on Slovakia, Slovenia. Yes, so this is connected with the bad influence of socialist time. But a new period for our cooperatives is the Polish accession to European Union, which have a positive effect on the situation of certain operating cooperatives. And moreover, we have also a new branches of cooperatives. The example is the Cooperative Agricultural Producer Group or a social cooperatives, which are very popular, for example, in Italy. So it's necessary to rebuild trust in cooperatives by showing good examples from other countries, especially USA, Denmark, and others. But we can observe slow changes in country dwellers' attitudes towards cooperatives. The example, energy cooperative or the social cooperative. The next slide, please. So we have, of course, a lot of different regulations concerning cooperatives. The more popular, the basic, is the Cooperatives Law from 1982, but we have there are some examples on the slide, for example, social cooperatives, housing cooperatives, banking cooperatives, also energy cooperatives, which are regulated in the Act of Renewable Energy Sources, and also the farmers cooperatives. But of course, there is a lot of others regulation which have influence. The next slide, please. As I mentioned, in cooperatives in agriculture are popular. There are two examples. That is the agricultural production cooperatives deal with joint farm management and work for the members in the farm. And what is important, according to the law, a member of the cooperative and his household have the right and duty to work in the cooperative. And the other example is the cooperative groups of agricultural producer or farmers cooperatives. This is a voluntary association of natural or legal persons engaged in the agriculture activities. So the farmers join together, sell and buy products, make a processing, and examples that we have now more than 900 groups which generally choose the cooperative entity, because at the beginning they must have the legal personality and they register group, and then group can receive a money from European Union. The next slide, please. So I would like to underline that why this cooperation is together, it's important for the farmers, because we have a lot of challenges and problems. For example, we have small farms in Poland at 12 hectares. It's the average. We have more than 1,400,000 farms. So farmers should work together. So because of the low competitiveness, there are also the problems related with the energy crisis, the war in Ukraine, where the agro holding exists. There is also important to work together because of the new technology, digitalization. There is important also because of receiving a money and to create also from the European Union. The next slide, please. So there is a lot of problems also connected with the changing the farmers, the new generation in the farm. So that's why it's better organic farming, also important. The farmers make organic farming and sell together. And the next kind of a cooperative, which are a new cooperative in Poland, so they have 20 years. The first created in 2004, and then in 2006 it was a separate regulation. They are the social cooperative. We have more than 1,500 such social cooperatives together. So the members are unemployment person and person with disability, because it's difficult to find them a work. So this cooperative works for the professional reintegration of members and employees, and work also for the reintegration of social reintegration. And in this social cooperative generally works and creates them a woman. We have 70% of the members in the social cooperative are women, and they are this social cooperative are connected, for example, with the processing, with selling food, and also with the protecting environmental. Next slide, please. So they are new, and a lot of new has been created. The new cooperatives, they are also energy cooperative, but I would like to underline that the cooperative entity, also this which exist now, so dairy cooperative, social cooperative, agriculture, are trying to take part in the energy transition, because many of them have a potential to invest in energy, in photovoltaic, for example, housing cooperatives, and also wind farm or biogas plants, which are made a lot of farmers. So the next slide, please. And on the next slide, there are some examples. For example, Mekowita, it's the biggest dairy cooperative, was awarded the title of eco-investors in 2023 in the food industry from construction, the energy independence bio-fermentation plan. It's this cooperative and another dairy cooperative made a lot of investment in energy transition, but also a small cooperative, there is a small cooperative of agricultural production cooperative can be a prosumers, because fulfill the requirements, because according to the Polish law, also the prosumers can be a legal person. So they also receive a money from European money for some investment. Also the housing cooperatives can receive money back to 50% of the grant of the project cost for installation of the construction and new renewable energy system. So now I would like to ask Magister Tomasz Marzec, who is the PhD candidate, to say something about the energy cooperatives in Poland.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the possibility of presenting during this webinar. And if we can go to the next slide. Energy cooperatives are quite a new concept in Poland, the new type of cooperatives, because as you can see from this timeline, the concept of energy cooperative was introduced in Polish law only in 2016. And during the next years, there were a few amendments to legal framework, which helped to develop energy cooperatives. So the first energy cooperative was registered only in May 2021, so 5 years after introduction of those legal regulations. After that, there were also another improvements to the legal regulation. The most important is entry of the provisions providing support system and some new public fundings for community energy, which have resulted with 38 energy cooperatives registered right now, with only 2 at the beginning of 2023. So as you can see, this sector is developing quite energetically. Can you go to the next slide? Yes. So about the subject of our activity of energy cooperative, it is strictly regulated. This cooperative can utilize any type of renewable energy sources. It can be solar energy, energy from biogas, biomethane, all sorts, but it can be only used for the own needs of the energy cooperative and its members. So they cannot sell the energy to the third parties. They can only produce for their own needs. And with that, energy cooperative is given a support system, which is very important factor of success, maybe the future success, but now development of this energy sector in Poland. This support system consists of quantitative billing of electricity. So when energy cooperative produces megawatt hour, it also receives the megawatt hour from the energy grid. And with that, they can work for their own needs. They satisfy their own needs rather than just selling the energy to the other entities. Next slide, please. What are the benefits looking at this support system, the whole legal scheme of working of energy cooperative? The most important benefit is reducing energy costs for cooperative members, because they do not have to buy energy from energy seller. And what is really important, that because of the war in Ukraine, because of the fighting the climate changes and the European Union legislation, the costs of energy in Poland have risen really significantly in recent years. So this is a very important benefit, especially for the people who are in danger of energy poverty, and also for the business actors. Energy cooperatives can sell energy to its members. Next slide, please. So I wanted at the end to show you 2 success stories. The first one is energy cooperative Biodar. It utilizes power of more than 101 megawatt of PV installation, which is important because right now all energy cooperatives utilizes only 7 megawatts. So it's the biggest cooperative, and it was built on recultivated landfill site, so it's also ecological. And the next slide, please. And of course, a social energy cooperative, which was also established by municipality, and it helps to provide members who are citizens with low-cost green energy and to help them with energy poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Suhan and Dr. Mazitz. Thank you. It's good to have those examples. And I have to say that Mlekowita example is very close to me because I buy Polish cheese in an American store here in Washington area. So the Polish goods are getting far away from the production area. Great success. Thank you. Let's move on. Dr. Bilochenko is based in Kiev, Ukraine, and linked with the National Science Center Institute of Agrarian Economics. Andrei, please.
Until 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea and some parts of Donetsk and Lugansk regions, Ukraine was one of the largest countries in the EU. Please, next slide.
Next slide.
Yeah. The agricultural sector has always played an important role in Ukraine's economy. However, complex agrarian reforms, including land reform, have been underway in our country for many years. Please, next slide. Next slide.
Next slide.
Yes. Let me say some words about difficult Ukrainian agrarian reforms. In the 1990s, most of the agricultural land in Ukraine belonged to former collective and state farms, which were renamed into collective agricultural enterprises. A presidential decree of 1995 provided a program of gradual reforms for those enterprises by granting their current and former members land shares. The decree stipulated the shares were to be distributed among current and former members of collective farms, as well as certain categories of workers employed in the social sector, education, medicine, and etc. The mass liquidation of the collective agricultural funds through the distribution of shares actually began only in 1999. So the process of liquidation of those enterprises began circulation of land shares in Ukraine. But in 2001, a temporary moratorium was lobbied for, first for 1 year and then for 4 years, and many years of this moratorium followed. Yeah, and it only ended only on the 1st of July 2021, when the law of Ukraine of the turnover of agricultural land came into force. And all this has led to the formation of specific agricultural, even unique agricultural structure in Ukraine. Please, next slide. Next slide, please. Even in the midst of war, small producers are still operating in Ukraine, producing about 10% of all agricultural products. The medium-sized segment of producers has a share of approximately 65%. And there's also a large segment, the so-called agricultural companies or agroholdings, which produces about 25% of agricultural goods. So even before the war, large agricultural companies and other commodity producers began to play an increasingly important role. Small farmers and sometimes even medium-sized agricultural producers operated in aggressive environment of emerging market economy. They often remained unprotected, and unless they joined forces, could not resist commercial firms that intermediate in the agricultural production and marketing chain. So both before and after the beginning of full-scale Russian-Ukrainian war, there were many obstacles to the development of cooperation in Ukrainian agricultural sector. Next slide.
Next slide.
There includes the absence of appropriate systemic state policy for the development of the national cooperative movement, a lack of understanding among farmers to the benefits of agricultural cooperation, a lack of professional cooperatives, etc. At the same time, even before the war, Ukraine had not created adequate statistical database on the development of agricultural cooperatives and their contribution to the national economy. Unfortunately, in the times of war, it's quite difficult to find reliable statistical data in Ukraine. Therefore, we will use the information for the pre-war period. So at this slide, you can see the information of the 1st of January 2019. Well, the number of registered agricultural services cooperatives was about 1,300. And there were mostly dairy cooperatives, land cultivation and harvesting cooperatives, meat cooperatives, fruit and vegetable cooperatives, grain cooperatives, and cooperatives providing other services. And I could say the agricultural cooperation in Ukraine has developed extremely slowly. We can say that according to estimates by the Ministry of Agrarian Policy and Food of Ukraine, even shortly before the war, there were a tendency for a significant number of cooperatives to wind down their operations. At the end of 2019, only about 45% of agricultural cooperatives were actually operating. Next slide.
Next slide, please.
And prior to the war, it was mainly those agricultural cooperative associations that were established and operating on the basis of grant funds or what were included in cooperative support and development programs that successfully carried out their activities. I can also mention about USAID Agricultural and Rural Development Support Project that has made a significant contribution to support Ukrainian grain cooperatives under martial law. We can say about different cooperatives in the Dnipro region, Kirovograd region, mostly grain farmers and milk farmers. And they used this help, and it was very useful for them, their activity. Next slide, please. The main constraints to the successful development, the main problems, successful development of agrarian cooperation in Ukraine are low motivation of individual farmers, insufficient state support for development of cooperatives, a low level of development of material and technical base, insufficient qualification of and experience of management staff of agricultural cooperatives, and of course the need for further improve the exciting legislation and regulatory framework. I can say that farmers in Ukraine have the potential to develop agricultural cooperatives. At the same time, such households, such farmers say they are produced largely through informal sales channels. According to experts, unofficial market for agricultural producers of small sector exceeds 80% for vegetables, 60% for meat, and 40% for milk. So thus, the development of cooperation in Ukraine has a great historical background. Next slide, please.
Next slide.
Next slide, please. And if we take advantage of this, addition to the European and global experience and the best foreign practice, the cooperative idea in Ukraine can have a great future after the war. We believe that even before the end of the war, important areas for the development of cooperation in Ukraine should include further development of agricultural cooperation and development of social cooperatives like those established in Poland. Unfortunately, I can say that at present, Ukraine has no legislation that would define the procedure for establishing and operating social cooperatives. That's why the Polish experience will be very important for their development. The next slide, please. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly when and under what conditions this terrible war will end in Ukraine. But it will end someday. And unfortunately, many people, many military will return to their homes for peaceful life. And many of them will know where to return to. Towns and villages, production facilities, industrial and agricultural enterprises have been destroyed. So reconstruction will require not only significant funds, but also great organizational efforts. And this is where the cooperative idea can come in handy again. Next slide, please.
Next slide.
Thus, the priority areas for the development of cooperation in Ukraine, especially in the rural areas immediately after the end of the war, could be organization of energy cooperatives, development of construction cooperatives, stimulating the introduction of innovations, introduction of modern technological innovations, and development of association of cooperatives and others. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Vilichenko. This was quite an impressive list of accomplishments and at the same time needs. Let's move on. We have the third presentation now with our guest speakers, Senior Engineer Frank Berg of NRECA International and the Program Manager based in Lusaka, Zambia of the Zambia Electric Cooperative Development Program, Ms. Doreen Chipika Valia.
Thank you very much for having me. Just a recap on what Frank was going over. So NRECA International has been working in various communities worldwide. There are over 250 electric cooperatives that have been established. These are serving over 220 million people in 48 countries. And our aim as NRECA International is to empower communities to provide power so that we can improve their lives and the quality of life of these communities through electric cooperatives. I know once he comes back on, he may come back and probably provide additional information, but we can move on. And then... Hi, Frank, you're back?
Thanks. Yeah, it sounds like you covered it. Yeah,
okay.
NRECA's mission is to provide electricity and to empower the communities to control it. So the latest example of that is in Zambia, and Doreen is best positioned to speak to that. So thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming back on. So I'm going to talk about Zambia and what we're currently doing in Zambia. Our work is mostly in the rural communities of Zambia. Next slide, please. So first of all, I think to put it in context, I'd like to talk about the cooperative movement in Zambia, as well as the cooperatives that are here in Zambia. The cooperative movement in Zambia is not a new thing. It's been there for a very long time, pre-independence. Zambia got its independence in 1964 from the British. So the cooperative movement is way, way before that. Currently, the Department of Cooperatives is sitting in the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises. Before then, it was in the Ministry of Agriculture. It moved to the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry. And now it was recognized that these cooperatives are actually better placed under the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprise Development. So that is where the Department of Cooperatives is sitting. This slide just gives an overview of the type of cooperatives that are in Zambia. The data is a bit old, where we didn't have any current information, but I think it gives a correct overview of what kinds of cooperatives exist. A lot of the cooperatives are under agriculture. And then, of course, then we have other type of cooperatives in other sectors, as has been shown in the slide. The concept of electric cooperatives is very new. As you can see, it's not even listed here. So this is part of the work that we are doing as NRECA to actually introduce this concept and also work with different government entities and different stakeholders to introduce the concept of electric cooperatives. Next slide, please. So the program we have in Zambia is the Zambia Electric Cooperative Development Program. This is a program that is funded by USAID, and we are working with the Rural Electrification Authority and also the government of Zambia, specifically the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprise Development, in this case, the Department of Cooperatives. We are working with different stakeholders and the government to develop electric cooperatives in the rural areas, and also to demonstrate that these ones the electric cooperatives can play a critical role in increasing electricity access in these areas, that it can also support the government's goal of universal energy access here in Zambia. The ZECDP goals, there are basically two overarching goals. The first one is to increase electricity in rural Zambia through the development of viable, thriving electric cooperatives or electric cooperative businesses. Then also we would like to demonstrate how this electric cooperative is going to support the expansion here in Zambia. The program is looking at piloting 5 electric cooperatives. So far, of the 5, we have established 2, and I'll be able to speak to that as we look at some of the achievements that we have. Next slide, please. So as I indicated, the ZECDP's goal is by the end of the program to have piloted 5 different electric cooperatives. Our models, we have 2 types of electric cooperatives, which one would be using an off-grid system, which is a mini-grid, serviced by a mini-grid. The other one would be a grid-tied cooperative. What that means is that the generation is from the main power utility, but the distribution system is the one that is managed by the electric cooperative. So the program was officially launched in 2021. And by 2023, we had established an electric cooperative in the northern part of the country. This is in a place which is about 1,100 kilometers from the capital, in Lusaka, in a community called Tatumbila. And currently, we have the electric cooperative has been legally registered with the government. An inaugural General Assembly was held in July 2023, and board members were elected. We have 9 board members, 3 of whom are female, and also the bylaws have also been adopted. Then we have also a land for the mini-grid was provided by the local chief. So this land has been fenced off, and construction of the mini-grid is set to commence by the end of this month. And it is expected that for the Tatumbila electric cooperative, we are looking forward to having it commissioned at the end of this year. The other electric cooperative is in the eastern part of the country. For the one in the eastern part of the country, this one is grid-tied. So similarly to the first one, we already have a board in place. The board was elected in March this year. And again, we have a similar composition for the board members, and the bylaws have been adopted as well. And this too has been legally established by the government. We are currently in the process of working with the board members to ensure that we provide the necessary governance training for the members. For the one in Tatumbila, this was already provided. We are now in the process of supporting the board in hiring the management team, so that once the mini-grid is completed, there will be a management team in place to support the operations of that mini-grid. In addition, as part of the program, gender is very, very important to the work that we do. We realize that it's important that there is participation of all excluded groups, including the women, the youth, and other vulnerable groups. So we completed a gender assessment, and this is part of the work that we do before we go into the community. We ensure that we carry out a gender assessment, and just so that we understand what are the needs and the needs of the different groups in that area. So we have a strategy and action plan that was developed in December 2023. Another aspect is we realize that cooperatives is all about the community and also ensuring that we understand what the community needs are. So at the start of one of the key things that we did is to ensure that we have a community engagement strategy. This strategy outlines how we deal with the community, and also how we deal with the different stakeholders, apart from the community, the government, and other key stakeholders to ensure that the program is successful. Finally, there's also a geospatial electric planning platform that was developed. This was developed in order to help provide evidence-based planning, electrification planning. We are working, as I indicated, with the Rural Electrification Authority. They are our partner in this. So this platform was actually developed for the Rural Electrification Authority. Next slide, please. So one of the key things I think which has been important, as I have said, here in Zambia, the concept of an electric cooperative is a new thing. And it has been very important for us to ensure that as we establish these electric cooperatives, there's also the aspect of ensuring that they're sustainable. And it's also about transferring the knowledge, as Frank had alluded to in his initial slide. NRECA has worked in a number of countries and has established a number of electric cooperatives. And so it's important that this knowledge is shared. And so that is part of what we're doing. So I'll quickly run through what the five steps that we follow in creating an electric cooperative. And then I'll talk about the two cooperatives that we now have so far. So for us, it's all about the people. It's understanding what the people want, and also ensuring that even as we go into the community, the people are the ones who are driving the process. It's a community-led process. So we begin with having conversations with the community members so that they understand their needs. We then also convene a general meeting to teach them about the electric cooperative model, what it's all about. And then everyone within the community would then decide, is this something that they want to go with, which is what we call a consent vote. Once people decide that, yes, this is what they're looking for, it's very important that then they understand that this is a business, and that even as the cooperative is formed and eventually we get to having the mini-grid or whatever technology we'll use, it's really about ensuring that there's a sustainable business. So from the onset, we will work to form a steering committee that will help us with, cooperative development within the community. We also work with the different government entities to ensure that they are also part of the process and there'll be sustainability afterwards. The next step is also in realizing that it's all about the community and that it takes a community to make the cooperative work. So we then support the steering committee to launch a membership campaign and ensure that there is member registration, and encourage the different community members to run for elections so that they are part of the board. Once an inaugural General Assembly has been held, a board of directors is actually elected. So this whole process we went through for both Tatumbila and Petaoke. The next phase, which gets to be interesting, is the turning on of the lights. In this case, this is where we are now with Tatumbila, and we're hoping that we'll be able to actually showcase a lot more around this. So at this point, this now talks about applying for a license, constructing the power utility, helping the board of directors hire a manager and his team, and also train the board in co-governance issues. We also train the management team to ensure that there's capacity. We also train the community in terms of power safety and what needs to be done. So finally, it's also about keeping the lights on. So this is post the lighting ceremony. How do we ensure that the lights are kept on. This is where now sustainability is very important. And as I indicated, we're working with different government entities and different partners to ensure that even as this program ends, there's sustainability. Next slide, please. I think I'm running out of time. I can just quickly run through the next slide.
Yes, Doreen, please, because unfortunately we are getting close to 10 o'clock, and I know that people need to leave, and there won't be much time for live follow-up conversation. However, I want to assure everyone that all the questions that we have so far received and any other questions that you may care to pose will be answered, and we will share with everyone the materials for this session today and all the examples that have been shared with us. So just in 2 minutes to wrap up, Doreen, please tell us about the 2 successful examples.
Thank you. So I think just in a nutshell, the key factors for success, it's important that there's an enabling environment, that the government and laws support this, that there's strong governance within the community, that also from the onset, there's ownership and buy-in from the community. The structure of the cooperative is very important, the board, the tariff, access to finance. I think one of the challenges which was coming up was the issue of finances. That too is important. Access to technical assistance is important. And we can see that all these factors are actually the factors that at first were actually listed as barriers. So these are some of the things that we take into account going forward. The last slide, please. Yes, so finally, I thought it would not do justice, we need to talk about this program as part of the ZDCDP because it's very important. I already outlined that for us, the role of women and also socially excluded groups is very important. So we have a program specific to address and increase the effective participation of women and other excluded groups in electric cooperatives in Zambia. So that just outlines the different activities that are currently happening under that program as part of the ZDCDP. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Doreen. Thank you, all of our speakers. We include here a couple of links to supporting materials where you can learn more about each program and all the different aspects of activities that these organizations or researchers are studying. We thank everyone for participation. And with that, I want to close and invite for the next meeting yet to be announced, perhaps in 2 months' time. Thank you, everyone, and see you soon again. Bye.